The photo on my desk used to mean everything to me. You know the one. Every couple has it. Us on a beach in Tulum. She's laughing, wind in her hair, and I'm looking at her like the rest of the world doesn't exist. And in that moment, it didn't. That photo was the screensaver on my phone, printed in our hallway, stuck to the fridge under a magnet from that trip. It was supposed to be proof that we were solid, that we were happy. Turns out, the camera lied. Or maybe we did. I found out my wife was cheating not from a text, not from some dramatic confrontation. I found out because I noticed something strange in one of her photography clients' posts on Instagram. She's a professional photographer. Weddings mostly. Proposals, engagements, destination shoots. She's good, really good, and her calendar stayed booked solid. She loved what she did, and I loved that she had something she was passionate about. Until her passion started running later and later. Her name's Elise. We've been married 5 years. No kids yet, but we've been talking about it. We had a house just outside Denver, Mountain View, little garden in the back, 2 dogs who adored her. I was a high school English teacher. Simple life. Stable. Or so I thought. It was a Sunday night when everything started to unravel. She was in the shower, and I was scrolling through Instagram, killing time. One of her clients, a woman named Danny who Elise had photographed the month before, had just posted a reel. A highlight montage from her engagement shoot. Elise had told me all about it, said the couple was sweet, affectionate, crazy in love. But as the reel played, I saw something I wasn't supposed to. In one of the shots, Elise was visible in a reflection. That wasn't strange. She usually stayed behind the lens, but accidents happen. What was strange was that she wasn't alone. A man, tall, dark-haired, maybe mid-30s, was standing next to her. Not holding gear. Not assisting. Just standing close. Way too close. One hand resting lightly on her back. I paused the video. Zoomed in. It was subtle. If you didn't know her, you'd miss it. But I knew her. I knew the way she leaned into comfort. I knew the look she gave when she thought no one else was watching, the small, instinctive smile she reserved for someone she trusted. She was smiling like that at him. It hit me like a gut punch. I tried to shake it off at first. Told myself it could be anyone. A fellow photographer. A friend. Maybe a cousin of the bride. But the second she stepped out of the bathroom and into the bedroom, towel wrapped around her, humming softly, I looked at her, and for the first time in our marriage, I didn't recognize the woman in front of me. Something had shifted. Elise, I asked casually, you said that shoot in Boulder was solo, right? She froze mid-step, just for a second. A blink. Yeah, she said. Why? Just wondering. Saw a post from Danny, and there was a guy in the background. Looked like he was with you. She shrugged, too quickly. Oh, yeah, that was her brother or something. He helped carry some gear up the trail. No big deal. She kissed my cheek, slipped into her pajamas, and climbed into bed like nothing happened. But something had happened. That moment set something in motion I couldn't stop. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I got up around 3 a.m., went in my office, and pulled out the external hard drive where she backed up all her shoots. She never password protected it, said it was too annoying. She trusted me. Why wouldn't she? The files were organized by date and client. I scrolled until I found the Boulder shoot. Inside the folder, there were 2 sets of raw images, one with the couple and one that stopped me cold. They weren't portraits. They weren't client photos. They were her. Her on a balcony, wine glass in hand, staring out at the trees. Her barefoot on a hotel bed, camera in her lap, laughing at something off-screen. And then, one frame blurry, rushed, poorly composed of her kissing that same man from the Instagram post. No labels. No metadata. Just the truth, hiding in plain sight. I stared at the screen for a long time. Not angry. Not yet. Just hollow. She'd used the same camera we bought together. The one we saved up for. The one I gave her on our 3rd anniversary, wrapped in recycled paper with a note that said, "Capture the world. I'll be here when you come home." And she used it to capture him. I didn't wake her. I didn't confront her. Instead, I copied everything onto a flash drive, tucked it into a book on my shelf, and crawled back into bed beside her. She curled into me in her sleep. And I laid there, eyes open, knowing everything was about to change. I spent the next 2 weeks in performance mode. Smiling. Laughing. Making coffee like I always did. Letting her kiss me goodbye before weekend shoots and text me little heart emojis midday. I even complimented one of her Instagram posts, something about natural light and mood. She replied with a string of hearts and a "love you, babe." It made me sick. But I needed more. Not more evidence. No, I already had enough to bury the whole damn lie. What I needed was understanding. How long had this been happening? Who was this guy? Was he some passing fling? Or was she building something deeper, something parallel to our life, hoping I'd never notice? Turns out, I didn't have to dig very deep. I started by checking her schedule. She kept everything in a shared calendar: shoots, meetings, travel dates. On the surface, nothing stood out, until I began cross-referencing locations with timestamps from her photo backups. Elise was meticulous about shooting in RAW, and every image had embedded metadata: location, date, even the lens she used. That's how I noticed the gaps. Days marked as editing in her calendar had matching image sets tagged hundreds of miles away from our city. Solo shoot in Aspen was actually 2 nights at a rustic Airbnb in Taos. No client photos from that trip, just landscapes and selfies. Her, wine drunk, curled into someone's chest. I ran a reverse image search on one of the shots. His name was Trevor Maddox, a landscape photographer and, of course, social media influencer. The type who turned drifting into a brand. Nomadic, boho, beard, camera strap, and a 1,000-yard stare that probably made his followers swoon. I found his site. His bio read, "Capturing the world, one wild heart at a time." Yeah, that tracks. I checked his travel blog. His post from our hidden cabin escape matched one of the Airbnb photos Elise had. Same porch. Same goddamn mug sitting on the railing. But the real dagger came from his Instagram. Buried in his highlights, under a reel titled Muse, was a time-lapse clip of him shooting someone wrapped in a blanket at golden hour. The silhouette was unmistakable. Elise. She'd liked the post. Of course she had. That night, while she was out at another sunset couple shoot, I poured myself a drink and stared at the flash drive in my desk drawer. It held everything. The proof. The betrayal. The turning point. I thought about confronting her, throwing it all on the table, demanding answers. But something in me shifted. Confrontation wouldn't bring clarity. She'd deny, spin, maybe even cry. But I wouldn't get the truth. Not really. And I didn't want a breakdown. I wanted control. Quiet, calm control. The kind that made sure I didn't walk away as the man who got broken and pitted. I needed to flip the script. So I started planning. The first step was legal. Colorado is a no-fault divorce state, but that doesn't mean infidelity is irrelevant, especially when shared assets are involved. Elise and I co-owned our home, our savings, and, more delicately, her business. Technically, I'd invested early on to help her buy equipment and get established. My name was on the LLC paperwork. She never updated it. Her success? I had a legal stake. So I called a friend, not a divorce lawyer, but someone who referred me to one. Discreet. Tactical. No nonsense. After I laid it all out, she said one thing that made everything click. You don't need to expose her. You need to outmaneuver her. Game on. I stopped engaging emotionally. Didn't rise to her bait when she came home late. Didn't flinch when she forgot to invite me to a gallery show she said was couples only. I stopped posting pictures of us. Turned my social media private. Removed husband from my bio. Small things. Subtle shifts. But Elise noticed. Are you okay? She asked one night, folding laundry on the bed. Yeah, I said without looking up. Just tired. You've been distant lately. I met her eyes. Held the gaze for a beat too long. Have I? She blinked, clearly unsure how to read that. Yeah. I mean, kind of. I nodded and went back to reading. Let her wonder. A week later, I started separating accounts. Banking first, then subscriptions. Pulled my portion of business funds and opened a new checking account. Froze the joint credit card. Canceled the Amazon Prime that only she used. Each move carefully calculated, non-confrontational, and fully documented. I wasn't leaving yet. I was unbuilding. It's strange, watching a marriage unravel from the inside. You start to see the architecture of it all, the hidden beams, the cracked supports. The way someone's affection becomes performative once they've emotionally checked out. She still kissed me goodbye. Still called me love in public. But the private version of Elise? She was already somewhere else. Somewhere with Trevor, capturing golden hour with their boho blanket aesthetics and their curated dreams. She had no idea her own story was being written in parallel, not with sunlight and soft filters, but with strategy and cold precision. She had her lens, but I had the full picture. The day Elise realized something was off, it wasn't because I yelled or accused her. It was because I stopped filling in the silence. We were sitting at the table, her editing on her laptop, me reading an article on my phone, and for the first time, she couldn't reach me. Not emotionally, not conversationally. The current that always ran between us had gone cold. She kept glancing up, waiting for me to ask how her shoot went, waiting for me to offer her a bite of whatever I was cooking. I didn't. She fidgeted, bit her thumbnail, said, "So, I've been thinking maybe we should go away for a weekend. You and me." A pause. Then, somewhere without cell service. It almost made me laugh. "Oh," I said. "Yeah." She smiled, but not fully. "We haven't done something spontaneous in a while. Just us. No work. No distractions." I looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "Sure," I said. "Let me know what weekend works for Trevor." That was the first time I said his name out loud. Her smile shattered. What?" she stammered. "You heard me." Her hands tightened around the ceramic coffee mug in front of her. "I don't." "I've seen the photos," I said flatly. "The ones you forgot to delete. The Airbnb receipts. His highlight reels." She sat frozen, like a deer caught mid-step. "I wasn't going to say anything until the papers were ready," I added. "But I figured you might want to skip the fake getaway planning." Her jaw moved, but no words came. Then finally, "It's not what you think." I almost admired the audacity. "You've been sleeping with him since July," I said. "Maybe earlier. You lied about work trips. You used equipment I paid for to build a fantasy life behind my back. And you took pictures. You documented it." She flinched. "Do you know how sick that is?" I said, still calm. "To immortalize your betrayal frame by frame?" Her voice cracked. "I didn't plan it." "You did plan it. Every time you booked a cabin. Every time you wrote editing day on the calendar. Every time you smiled in his camera and came home to my bed." Her face collapsed into her hands. I could hear the stifled sob, but I didn't move, didn't reach out. Instead, I stood. "You need to leave," I said. She looked up, mascara already smudging. "Please don't do this. Let's just talk. Let me explain. You're not going to talk your way out of this. And I'm not going to let you. So gather whatever you need and go stay at one of your Airbnbs. Or with him. Doesn't matter." She didn't move. "Elise," I said, voice low, final, "if you don't leave tonight, the next thing I hand you will be a court order." I walked upstairs, packed a duffel for her, set it by the door. She sat on the couch for a long time, crying softly, whispering to no one. Eventually, she left, didn't slam the door, didn't say goodbye, just drifted out like fog burned off by morning sun. And I didn't cry, not because I wasn't grieving, but because the grief had already passed. What was left wasn't sadness. It was clarity. The next day, I filed. I handed everything to my lawyer, photos, travel logs, financials. We drafted the asset division agreement based on her breach of fiduciary duty in our business. Since I'd invested early and retained ownership on paper, and because she'd misused business funds for personal trips, the leverage was mine. She tried to push back, claimed I was overreacting, claimed she was confused. But the thing about people like Elise? They're only confused when you stop playing along. Eventually, she saw the writing on the wall. We settled quickly. I got the house, the dogs. My full investment returned with interest. And more importantly, I got full removal from the business. My name gone. My involvement erased. Let her rebuild it on her own, if she could. I thought she might show up one night. Drunk. Emotional. Full of regrets. But she never did. I think she knew that door was locked, not just literally, but permanently. A few weeks later, one of her ex-clients, a bride she'd photographed the year before, emailed me. Said she was sorry. That Elise had been off during the wedding. That the photos were rushed. Uninspired. I didn't reply. It wasn't my story to explain. But I scrolled through Elise's Instagram one last time. The Muse reel with Trevor was gone. So was half her portfolio. The timeline told me everything. Trevor bailed. Or maybe she ran, thinking a clean slate would erase the stain. But it never does. Photographs lie. But the silence that comes after? That's always honest. The first time I saw her again after she left, it wasn't in person. It was in a sponsored ad. I was scrolling Facebook, something I rarely did, when her face showed up in the corner of my screen. Smiling, windswept, camera in hand. Elise Maddox Photography, now booking for spring. Maddox. She'd taken his last name professionally. They weren't married. I checked. But she was already branding herself under it. Probably thought it gave her more artistic flair. Or maybe she was trying to erase the version of herself tied to me, the wife who built a life in a suburban house with a man who read poetry and made pancakes on Sundays. It didn't sting. Not in the way she probably hoped it would. It was more like looking at a stranger I used to know in another life. Still, something about it itched at the edges of my mind. A need not for revenge, but for truth. Something honest. Something final. So I called in a favor. One of my former students, now a skilled digital forensics tech, owed me for writing his college recommendation letters. I gave him a name, a timeline, a few key emails. Within 2 days, I had what I needed. Turns out, Elise hadn't just used business funds for personal travel. She'd also taken deposits from clients she never photographed. Couples whose contracts she breached, who never received edits or galleries or refunds. It was all there: flagged transactions, unanswered emails, even a formal complaint filed with the state's Small Business Bureau. That was my opening. I didn't post the evidence. I didn't send it to Trevor, or to her followers, or to the industry Facebook groups where she was still pretending to be a tastemaker. I sent it to 3 of her clients. Not maliciously, just as a courtesy. With screenshots. With dates. With names. I didn't tell them who I was. I let the truth speak for itself. Within a week, Elise's online presence started cracking. Negative reviews surfaced. The now booking post disappeared. Her business Instagram went private. And then, one morning, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Why are you doing this?" No greeting. No name. I didn't reply. She followed it up with, "You said you didn't want revenge. You said you just wanted out." She wasn't wrong. I had said that. But she misunderstood the difference between revenge and accountability. I hadn't exposed her. I'd simply taken my hands off the rope and let gravity do its job. She called next. Twice. Left a voicemail on the second try. "Ryan," she said, her voice brittle. "I know you're angry. I know I deserve it. But please, stop. You don't know what I've lost." That was the last message she ever sent me, because I blocked her number the moment it finished playing. What she'd lost wasn't mine to inventory. What I'd lost, that had been taken without warning, without apology, without grace. But the irony? I was no longer angry. I didn't think about her when I made coffee in the mornings. I didn't think about her when I picked up my dogs from the groomer. I didn't think about her when I rewatched the first 3 seasons of Stranger Things, sitting on a different couch in a house that now felt entirely mine. She had become a closed chapter, a framed lie I no longer hung on the wall. And yet, closure doesn't always come in dramatic crescendos. Sometimes, it's quiet, underrated, like standing in the middle of your living room one Tuesday afternoon, looking around and realizing, this piece is mine now. Still, I wanted to do something symbolic, not spiteful, just something that marked the end of it all. So I gathered every photo of us, every print, every framed memory, every glossy reminder of the story I thought I was living. I didn't burn them. That felt theatrical. I packed them into a box, sealed it, and labeled it, unrealized. Then I walked it to the edge of a hiking trail just past the city and left it in the free donation shelter. Maybe someone would reuse the frames. Maybe not. Either way, I didn't need them anymore. The house, now stripped of her presence, didn't feel empty. It felt clean. And when the afternoon light hit the living room just right, I noticed something new. A reflection in the glass door. Just me. No second shadow behind me. No ghost leaning in. And I liked it that way. The irony wasn't lost on me. She had made a life out of capturing other people's best moments, vows, kisses, laughing spins under string lights. She knew how to frame a story to look like forever. But in the end, her own story was the one that collapsed in the darkroom. That thought used to keep me up. Not because I missed her, but because I had to confront how deeply I believed the image she sold me. How willingly I bought it. But now? Now I sleep fine. The house is quiet. Honest quiet. No buzzing tension. No pretending. The dogs don't flinch when the door opens late at night. The drawers are full of things I actually use, not props to impress dinner guests. And I've started cooking again. Not to impress anyone, just because I like the sound of a pan hissing in olive oil, the smell of garlic filling the air. It was a Tuesday when the next twist came. I got a call from one of Elise's former clients, one of the women I had anonymously warned. Her name was Laurel. Her voice was steady, a little cool, but respectful. "I figured out who you are," she said, "and I just wanted to say thank you." That threw me. She explained that Elise had ghosted on delivering their final photos, even after the wedding. Laurel had been too overwhelmed to fight it, but when she saw the proof I'd sent, she finally pushed back. Filed a small claims case. 1. She owes us money, she said. Not just for the pictures. For the lies. I didn't say much. Just listened. I'm not calling for drama, Laurel continued. I just thought you should know she's gone. Like, really gone. Website down. Studio closed. Trevor? He dumped her, apparently. Word is she tried to crash at his place for a while. Didn't last. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I just felt finished. When the call ended, I sat outside on the porch for a while, watching the wind move through the trees. Somewhere far off, a neighbor's wind chime started up. It reminded me of the first summer Elise and I moved in. We'd hung a set by the back door. She said it made the house feel alive. I took them down the day after she left. The next day, Claire called. I hadn't heard from her in a while. We'd gone on a few dates, shared a couple of quiet weekends, then drifted apart when work got crazy on both ends. But the warmth in her voice hadn't changed. Hey, she said. I'm in town for a bit. Thought I'd see if you wanted to grab coffee. I didn't even hesitate. We met at a small cafe downtown. The kind with real mugs and scratched wooden tables. She looked the same, maybe a little lighter, a little more settled. We talked about everything but Elise. About music, travel, work, dogs, favorite books. And at one point, Claire leaned in and said, You look unburdened. I smiled. That's one word for it. She laughed. No, seriously. Last time I saw you, there was this heaviness behind your eyes. Like you were watching everything in case it collapsed again. I nodded. It was a habit. Took time to break. She studied me for a second, then said, Glad you did. We didn't plan anything else that day. No dramatic promises or rekindled romance. Just two people at peace in the middle of their own stories. Later that night, I sat in the living room and did something I hadn't done in over a year. I picked up my own camera. Not Elise's. Not one we shared. One I bought for myself back in college. I dusted it off, loaded a fresh memory card, and started taking shots, nothing fancy. Just things that felt real. The book half-read on the coffee table. The light falling across the kitchen tile. The reflection of my own face in the patio door glass, tired, yes, but calm. It felt good to shoot without pretending. To frame something honest, not curated. I started taking long walks after work, camera in hand. Documenting quiet things. Unremarkable moments. A dog rolling in grass. A man playing chess alone in the park. A stranger helping someone carry groceries. And when I started posting the photos, I didn't add filters. I didn't chase likes. I didn't tag locations. Just raw, real snapshots of life moving forward. People started noticing. Commenting. Not on the photography, necessarily, but on the stillness in it. One message stood out. Your photos feel like breathing room. Like the opposite of performative. I smiled at that. Because that's what healing is, isn't it? Breathing room. And I had mine now. The divorce was finalized on a rainy Wednesday. No court appearance. No drama. Just a signed PDF from my lawyer and a quiet ping in my inbox. Final decree attached. I read it twice, not because I didn't understand, but because part of me couldn't believe how quiet the end was. After everything, the deception, the unraveling, the night spent pacing the hall wondering what was real, it ended in a digital whisper. But that's the truth about endings. They're rarely fireworks. They're a light click, a signature, a sigh. I sat for a long while, staring at the document. Then I closed my laptop, stood up, and opened every window in the house. Let the rain come in. Let the air change. Let it all breathe again. There was no champagne. No burning of old letters. No grand declaration on social media. I'd already done my grieving. This was something simpler. This was release. Elise didn't reach out. She probably knew better. And even if she had, there was nothing left to say. She burned the bridge, and I didn't rebuild it. I didn't even mark the ashes. But here's the unexpected thing. In the months that followed, I started to appreciate what her betrayal gave me. Not in a poetic, everything happens for a reason way. That's nonsense. But in a brutal, undeniable clarity. Her betrayal forced me to confront the version of myself I had tucked away. The version that compromised too much, apologized too quickly, and confused loyalty with self-erasure. I used to think strength meant endurance, staying, sticking it out, forgiving until it hurt. Now I know better. Strength is saying, I see you clearly, and I choose me. I've built new rhythms. Mornings with black coffee and jazz. Late-night bike rides through quiet streets. I started mentoring again, young writers, mostly. Kids who don't quite know how to shape their voices yet. Teaching them feels like leaving something better behind than I found. Claire and I stayed in touch. Nothing serious, not yet. We meet up sometimes, no pressure, no expectations. She's steady, safe in a way that doesn't feel boring. A lighthouse kind of presence. But I'm not rushing anything. Because now I know that peace isn't something someone brings into your life. It's something you build brick by brick, choice by choice. I even submitted a few of my photos to a local gallery. They picked one. A black and white shot of a bench under a tree, just after a storm. Nothing dramatic. Just a single moment. Still, honest. Framed the way I saw it. The gallery asked for a title. I called it uncurated. Because that's what life is now. Unfiltered. Raw. No angles meant to impress anyone. Just the truth, and all its mess and beauty. I still keep one photo from the old life. Not the one from the beach. Not the wedding. Just one. Us laughing in the kitchen, mid-motion, the frame a little blurry. I don't keep it to mourn. I keep it to remember how far I've come. Because that man, the one in the picture, thought love meant never walking away. But the man I am now? He knows that sometimes, walking away is the only way back to yourself. And that's a story worth capturing.